At the exterior of Plaza 700, a faceless concrete tower looms in the distance behind an empty parking lot. A flickering neon sign buzzes against the night. In the interior, Todd's office is dim. Only Todd's desk lamp lit. Half-empty food containers, crumpled invoices, and greasy wrappers clutter the desk. Todd leans back in his chair, chewing, phone pressed to his ear. Todd says into the phone, "Zach, this is your last warning. Miss another shift, and you're done." He hangs up and slams his phone on the ground, then grabs a greasy takeout container from his desk, chewing loudly. Whole building runs on me anyway. Always has. The lights flicker. The room darkens. From the corner, a tall, calm figure emerges. The CEO. Todd freezes mid-bite, meat dangling from his fork. Recognition floods his face. "You. I've seen you. In the reports, you're the top. The one who owns it all. Why are you here? In my office." The CEO places a hand on Todd's jaw, fingers digging in. His tone is quiet, commanding. "The gala. You will prepare." Todd thrashes in panic, spilling his food across the desk. Todd says, What are... Get off of me!" Shadows sprawl up his arms. His skin bubbles, muscle twisting. His scream bends into a roar. T-Bone Todd explodes into form. Meat club in hand, snarling. T-Bone Todd says, "Get off me!" The CEO doesn't flinch. He turns, calmly guiding the monster into the dark. Both vanish into the shadows. The man in Todd doesn't remember the darkness, but the monster in him knows it very well. This world is full of people who want to see you crack. Bosses, friends, strangers online. And I've had moments where I've snapped and acted just as low as they did. In this story, that side of me shows up as the part that says, "Fine, you want a villain? I'll give you one." But the danger is, if you're not careful, you don't just fight the darkness. You start becoming exactly what you're fighting. Deep inside the rot realm, in a chamber of filth, the chamber pulses like a festering artery, walls slick with living rot, bloated veins twitching under blistering surfaces. A twisted table of bones stretches across the center, covered in scraps of withered meat and old contracts etched into dried skin. Shadow sludge creatures twitch between floor cracks, leaving streaks of tar and the sound of faint whispering. The CEO, pristine in his tailored black suit, sits tall with hands folded over a rusted briefcase. T-Bone Todd, enormous, clutches a club made from meat and shadow, chewing the bone's end mindlessly. Carl the carnivore, all muscle and scars, sits at the table, picking sludge off the table, but sigh-eyeing every movement in the room. A grotesque portal rips open in the chamber wall. Black sludge pours out in tendrils, folding outward like rotting muscle. From within steps the Rotfather, monstrous and regal. His towering frame is wrapped in rotten, warped flesh and shadows, with antlers and splintered bone and a face veiled in deathly cloth. His eyes burn like open wounds in a starless void. The Rotfather says, voice like gravel grinding in a tomb,
"The ripening mirrors."
Todd shifts in his seat. Carl's shoulders tense. The CEO gives a small, unreadable nod. The Rotfather says,
"Crazy man claws beneath the surface of your golden puppet. His scream called to my core. The gala will rip him open."
Carl says, leaning forward, growling through clenched teeth. "Why wait for the gala? Let me have him now. I'll gut Z-Man, crack his spine, and feed the scraps to the dark. I'll end him tonight." The Rotfather slams his skeletal hand on the table. The entire chamber shakes. A deafening roar erupts from his giant mouth like 1,000 souls screaming at once. The ceiling fractures, leaking threads of darkness. Carl drops to one knee, snarling in panic. Todd flinches. Even the CEO's glasses flicker, momentarily overwhelmed. The Rotfather says, bellowing, godlike,
"You will not touch him."
A crack now runs down the table's center, shadowy sludge hissing up through it like smoke. The Rotfather says, quieter now, but still shaking the room,
"You will break his hope, crush his purpose. Let agony feed the core. Let him be the herald of our feast."
A rat-sized shadow creature scurries across the warped table, tendrils twitching, whispering to itself in alien tongues. Todd grins, snatches it mid-crawl, and bites its head off with a wet crunch. Black sludge spilling down his chin. Carl snarls, annoyed he missed it. Seconds later, another shadow creature wriggles near his elbow. Without hesitation, Carl cleaves it in two, the halves twitching before melting into ash. Todd says, voice hushed, glancing at Carl, "So, the Gala's the slaughterhouse. We're just the butchers." The Rotfather says,
"Correct. The gala is not a celebration. It is an extraction. Each innocent sacrifice, each scream unspoken, it all births my heir."
Carl says, muttering to Todd, "I've gutted beasts that howl nightmares, but this thing is the nightmare." The CEO finally speaks, unshaken but measuring. "And if the puppet doesn't break, if Crazy Man stays buried." The Rotfather stares directly at him, fire burning in empty sockets. The Rotfather says,
"Then he dies, and rotting cord drinks either way."
A low, grotesque gurgle echoes from beneath the table. Suddenly, 4 black sludge pods emerge, pulsing and veined like tumors. They rupture open with wet pops, each depositing an unholy relic in front of its chosen host. In front of Carl, a jagged butcher cleaver with tuning fork prongs, the cleaver of dissonance. In front of Todd, a monstrous branding iron, the iron of indulgence. Before the CEO, a single black coin, forged from greed, wrath, and apathy themselves. And in the center of the table, a black fungal flower in full rotting bloom, the rotten blossom. Each item steams faintly in the corrupted air. The Rotfather says, quiet now,
"Tools of rupture, seeds of betrayal, weapons for the gala's feast."
Later on, shadows form behind the throne room. A massive figure steps forward, Wrath, his body wrapped in barbed wire, fire, and cracked obsidian armor, eyes burning red. Wrath says, growling, cautious, "This one, Z-Man, there's something in him, a tether. He doesn't just resist the core, he echoes it if you push too hard." The Rotfather raises a hand, silencing him, his veiled face unmoving. The Rotfather says, calm, dismissive,
"He is noise, untruly flawed, forgettable."
Wrath's fists clench. He lowers his gaze but says no more. The Rotfather says, quiet, smiling under the veil,
"Even if he shouts into the core, the rot will answer in silence."
A lonely road cutting through a dusky forest. Zach, in his all-green clothes, is driving his old car. The windshield reflects trees and fading light. Even after liberating Slaughter City, the screams don't leave his head. Then it happens, a missed call. Zach's phone flashes. The screen glows. It says, missed call, Todd, Plaza 700, 1 voicemail. The phone is on silent. Zach doesn't notice. In the rearview mirror, Zach's face is tense. In the background, the mirror's surface begins to ripple unnaturally. The black Z on his chest flickers to green in the reflection. Something is breaking. In the rearview mirror, a different face, grinning, replaces Zach's reflection. It looks just like his, but one eye blazes green and one eye pitch black. Zach's reflection says, "There's billions still screaming, hero. Now tell me, what did your peace songs fix?" Zach swerves the wheel, panic in his eyes. Tires screech as the car nearly veers off the road. Zach says, "No, this isn't me." The forest road grows darker as he regains control. Leaves swirl past the windshield in a twisted gust of wind. Then a distorted version of Zach's voice echoes in his head.
Oh, I am you. Just the parts you hide behind your smiles.
Zach reaches his ex's house to drop off a care package. His son opens the door, holding a half-eaten apple. Curious eyes. The boy looks up and says, "You okay, Dad? You look different." Zach kneels, hugs him tight, and Zach says, "Just tired, buddy. Saving the world isn't always easy. But I got this." The boy says, "You smell like burnt broccoli and ghosts." Zach freezes. The boy walks inside casually. Then Zach thinks to himself, even he can feel it. Something's wrong. Zach hugs his son goodbye, then gets back in his car and leaves. At the rooftop outside PAS HQ, the squirrel and raccoon perch on a vent, sharing a greasy popcorn bucket. The skyline glows faintly with shadow haze. The squirrel says, hopeful, pointing at the screens visible inside through a window. "Think Z-Man's got this one easy. Gala or not, he's strong enough." Raccoon, stuffing his face, shakes his head. "That's what you said when Cowboy stomped those generals back in the day. Then that went south real fast." Squirrel sits taller, eyes shining. "This time's different, you'll see." Raccoon smirks, raising the popcorn bucket like a toast. Then the raccoon says, "Come on. You know the drill. I brain the popcorn. I eat the popcorn. Then I go get more popcorn. That's how it always ends up. So let's go get the popcorn." And then the squirrel says, "Were you even listening to what I was saying, or are you just thinking about popcorn?" Inside of PAS's war room, Zach stands before a glowing blueprint of the Harvest estate. Brent says, "This is delicate. You'll be a guest at the gala. Wait for dinner to end, then sing your activation song. Convert as many as you can while they're vulnerable." He enlarges the red marker on their projectors. "And if you can reach the CEO's council, pull any driver port data you can. His system's logging shadow signatures that spike past anything we've seen." Zach says, "So stir hearts and snag proof." Brent says grim, "Exactly. Miss this window, and the next spike might crack the planet." Brent steps closer. He puts a micro camera and mic on Zach's collar. Brent says, "Eyes and ears on you, hero. I'll be right there, digitally anyway." LockDown enters, arms crossed. LockDown says, "You sure you're ready for this, fam? 'Cause I'm getting a vibe, and it ain't vegan." Zach forces a smile, hiding the shadow flickering behind him. Then Zach says, "We're stopping them without bloodshed. That's the mission." LockDown narrows his eyes. Then LockDown says quietly, "Just don't go weird on me, bro." Then Brent says, "Oh, before you guys leave, remember, black suits, shadow spray on the skin, you'll look just like Harvest agents, and you'll read like them too, and the energy signatures." LockDown says, sniffing his wrist as Brent sprays him, "Smells like licorice and brimstone." The green clothes Zach was wearing turned black, and the purple clothes LockDown was wearing turned black as well. They now look like Harvest agents. Kyle steps forward from the shadows of the war room. His hand rests on Zach's shoulder, his expression firm but encouraging. Kyle says, "Zach, once this mission's over, I want you leading your own chapter of PAS. You've earned it." Brent glances up with his arms folded at his counsel. His eyes narrow. Brent says, "With respect, Kyle, I don't think that's wise. I've seen him out there. He risks too much for others. We need a fighter, not liability." Kyle says, calmly, "Noted, Brent, but my decision stands. Sometimes heart is the better weapon." Zach looks down, conflicted but proud. A flicker of shadow lingers behind him, unnoticed, and Zach thinks to himself, "A chapter of my own?" Back inside the Shadow Realm, Rotfather looms on his throne, staring into a hovering black sphere, a pulsating orb of shadow flesh and dripping shadow light. Within its swirling surface, vague silhouettes of Zach and LockDown stepping toward the limousine flicker like ghosts. His burning sockets stay fixed on the sphere, unblinking. The orb whispers faintly, like a chorus of muffled screams. He hesitates, then steps forward, his gaunt form flickering faintly green before shadow swallows it again. Mortem says, voice low, careful, "My lord, the boy still carries light. If you unmake him too soon, that spark may scatter, lost to you forever." Rotfather's head tilts. He lets out a dry, raspy chuckle, one hand brushing across the sphere, distorting Zach's reflection.
Light, spark. You sound like a gardener begging for seedlings.
Mortem lowers his gaze, jaw tight. His hands curl into fists, trembling, but he says nothing more. Rotfather says, voice sharp,
He will sour. He will break. This is not mercy, Mortem. This is inevitability.
At the entrance of the Harvest facility, where the gala is being hosted, a sleek obsidian limousine drops Zach and LockDown off at the gates of the Harvest estate. Massive security guards in matted black armor stand still, blocking the entry. Zach says, "I'm gonna try to strip the shadows from them before we walk in." LockDown says, "Alrighty." Z-Man stands about 50 feet away from the guards, out of view from the guards, and he begins to sing, looking in their direction. Z-Man stops and thinks to himself, it's not working. LockDown says, "Come on, we got this," and they step forward towards the guards. As soon as one of the guards sees them, he says, "Password." Zach subtly presses his earpiece, his eyes flicker nervously to LockDown. Lynn says over the headset, "Hang on, I'm hacking into their eternal directory now. Almost there." LockDown says, whispering to Zach, "If she don't crack it in 5 seconds, I'm freestyling our way in." LockDown steps up, puffing his chest, trying to sound official, but clearly winging it. LockDown says, password? Of course. It's standard protocol. We're from the Shadow Unit 66 Department of Internal Bespoke Brimstone Appetite Surveillance, Division of Digestion and Carnal Compliance. The guard says, squinting, "That doesn't sound real." LockDown panics slightly but leans in, improvising harder, confidence rising as he starts spreading out official divisions. LockDown says, "Oh, it's real. We're also with the Department of Bohemian Butchery, the Brewery of Sweet Rinds of Mine, and the Protocol Wing for Hotel California operations. And yeah, you want cross-checks? Take it out with Stairway to Consumption." The guard glances at the other guard. They exchange a look. One raises an eyebrow, almost recognizing something. Then one guard says, murmuring, "Did he say Bohemian?" The other guard says, "Just scan the slate." One of the armored guards narrows his eyes. His hand drifts toward the hilt of a weapon at his hip, a jagged shadow-forged baton that hums faintly, the air around it distorting like heat waves. The guard says dryly, "Those are not departments." LockDown, sweating but grinning, launches into another strings of nonsense titles. The guards shift, annoyed, one stepping forward slightly, the other's grip tightening on the humming baton. LockDown says, "Well, yeah, the thing is they used to be departments, back before the merger. I mean, we've been out in the sector of Blood Gate for the last 6 months, so maybe they didn't update the roster." The guard says, cutting in, growling, "Password." Zach gulps. Tension spikes. Suddenly, a soft ping in Zach's earpiece. Lynn's voice cuts through. Lynn says, rushed in the headset, "Got it. The password is, the seed must rot. Say it now." LockDown snapping to attention, confidently shouting, "The seed must rot!" The guards pause. One checks a glitching halo slate on a flickering, translucent screen hovering in midair. After a beat, authorization flashes green. A guard nods and says, "Proceed." As they walk past, Zach whispers out the side of his mouth, "Department of what?" LockDown says, grinning, "Made it up, but we both smell like brimstone, so felt right." Zach says, "Were you pulling that out of a mission log or your playlist?" LockDown says, "Mission logs wish they had my bars." Inside the PAS HQ, Banks of monitors glow with live feeds of the Harvest Estate perimeter. Agents scurry, voices low but tense. Brent, Lynn, and Kyle stand in front of a central screen showing Zach and LockDown walking into the gala in disguise. Kyle says, calm and steady, he's got this. Zach's pulled us out of worse. Tower Siege, Slaughter City, he saves people. That's just what he does. Brent says low, yeah, but you didn't hear it, that scream. When the shadows swallowed him back in Slaughter City, it wasn't human. Then Lynn says, Brent, don't start, he came back. He's still him. Then Brent says, no, something else came back with him. I know what shadow possession looks like. That wasn't Zach screaming. It was something inside of him. Then Kyle says, enough. We all heard it through comms, Brent. But I believe in him. If you don't, then why are you even here? Then Brent says quietly, almost to himself, because if I'm right, someone has to be ready to stop him. Brent continues, if he even gives us one reason of doubt, Z-Man doesn't lead the next mission. Deal? Kyle glances at Brent, then back to the monitors. He exhales, barely audible, almost under his breath. Deal. Lynn thinks to herself, oh no. As the monitors flicker on screen, Zach's suit glitches black for a second. Only Lynn notices. Inside the Shadow Realm, at the outskirts of a shadow city, a colossal feeding hall looms silent, its long tables empty, bones and scraps left behind. Next to it, the trial battle arena sits still. In the center, at the top, a container filled with red liquid glowing faintly in the dark. The city feels abandoned. Everyone else has gone to prepare for the gala. In the middle of the arena floor, T-Bone Todd squats like an animal over a heap of fallen shadow beasts and agents. He tears flesh from a carcass with his teeth, gore dripping down his chin, chains still clanking faintly at his wrists. The silence makes his chewing louder, more grotesque. The CEO steps out of the shadows, stride measured, tendrils rippling faintly around him. His voice cuts like a blade. The CEO says cold, biting, this hall is empty for a reason, Todd. The city prepares for the gala, and you sneak in here to feed like a dog on corpses. Todd looks up, lips wet with blood, face twitching. He grunts low, eyes shifting to the towering container beside the arena. His voice is rough, childlike, and Todd says, rasping, curious, what's that? Can I eat it? The container is filled with crimson liquid, and it swirls faintly inside, glowing as if alive. Blood-stains streak at its base. Ruins carved into the frame pulse dimly. The CEO says cold, explaining, this is the trial arena. When a lesser soldier dares to challenge a superior, they fight here. Every drop of blood they spill fills the vessel. The first to fill it wins the right to command. Todd wipes gore from his chin with the back of his hand, lips twitching in a dumb grin. He chuckles. Todd says, I drink it dry. The CEO's eyes flash, his voice sharp. CEO says, snarling, you'd be butchered before your first gulp, too busy eating the scraps to see the blade. The CEO says, commanding, you've shown more control over your shadow. That's the only reason you're off the leash. Don't make me change my mind. The gala awaits. Todd lumbers after him, grunting, his massive shadow twitching as if reluctant to leave the blood-soaked arena behind. Later, at the Harvest Gala, the Harvest Estate looms, gargantuan, opulent, and eerie. Crimson banners ripple over a withered forest below, and blood-red moon hangs above like a curse. The Harvest Gala, one last infiltration. A vast ballroom shimmers with golden and crimson light. Crystal chandeliers glint overhead, casting sharp reflections across the polished marble floor. A single, impossibly long and wide rectangular table dominates the center of the room. Dozens of powerful-looking guests already seated along its length, masked generals in fine tuxedos and gowns. The air is thick with muted chatter, faint music, and the clink of glasses. Plates drip with bloodied meat. At the head of the table stands a sharp-suited harvest agent with a clipboard in hand, overseeing the seating. Behind him, Zach and LockDown enter in borrowed tuxedos. Zach smiles strange, eyes scanning the grotesque scene, while LockDown adjusts his collar with a faint, crooked smile. Harvest General says, raising a glass, "To conquest through consumption!" The toast echoes. Zach's jaw tightens. His inner voice cuts through the noise. Zach thinks to himself, perfume over rot, drowning in dressed up decay. The Harvest agent turns to them, gesturing politely to follow as they're led toward their seats at the massive table. The Harvest agent says, this way, gentlemen. They're led halfway down the length of the grand table, where empty seats await them. As they sit, a server appears silently, placing slender crystal goblets before them, each brimming with a deep red liquid. LockDown eyes his drink, raising it slightly with a crooked grin. LockDown says to Zach and Dry, well, at least they got wine. He takes a casual sip, then freezes, his eyes widen in disgust as he spits the liquid in an explosive spray, straight into the face of a finely dressed man seated next to him. The man gasps, dabbing at his silk collar with a napkin, glaring daggers at LockDown. LockDown says, wiping his mouth, muttering, blood. Zach doesn't even glance at the commotion. His eyes are fixed ahead on the stage as the auction begins. The auctioneer says, booming over the crowd, lot for 24, 50,000 acre of untouched rainforest, cleared and ready for development. Starting bid, 10 million. Hands shoot up. Bidding starts. Zach's jaw tightens and he sets the bloody glass back on the table. The auctioneer continues. Sold! Congratulations! And next up, 7 fully operational factory farms complete with shadow tech upgrade. Starting bid, 15 million! Zach grips the edge of the table. His eye twitches. Across from him, LockDown glances sideways, still dabbing at his lips with a napkin, muttering to himself. Then the auctioneer says, in lot 26, a pitiful sanctuary bought out and rebuilt as a state-of-the-art lab already stocked with tens and thousands of live test subjects. Opening bid, 20 million! Crack! Zach's hand closes around the stem of his glass and shatters it in his palm. Shards tinkle onto the white tablecloth as the red liquid drips between his fingers. Guests nearby glance at him warily. He doesn't flinch. LockDown leans close, his voice low. LockDown says, cool it. Not yet, bro. He's coming. As if on cue, the room falls silent. The chandeliers flicker and dim, casting long, jagged shadows across the ballroom. The grand double doors at the far end groan as they swing open. The air seems to tighten, heavy and cold, as the CEO of the Harvest strides in. Flanked by 2 silent bodyguards clad in black, his presence alone silencing the whispers. Every head turns as he makes his way, unhurried, toward the podium at the head of the massive table. At the table, Zach exhales slowly, the broken glass crunching faintly under his hand as he watches the figure ascend the stage. A waiter glides up and sets down a raw steak in front of Zach. The meat glistens under the light. Zach flinches, his lips pressing into a tight line. The waiter says, it's freshly killed just 5 minutes ago. Zach's eyes twitch as he feels deep frustration and anger for not being there to save the animal. And so, the show begins. From the side of the room emerges T-Bone Todd, hulking monstrous beneath his red-veined tuxedo, flesh fused with shadow. A meat club sways from his belt, and in one massive fist, he clutches a crimson relic that pulses like a cursed beating heart, which he places in the corner of the room. Then he plants himself beside the podium. Next to him stands the CEO, his coined relic neatly inside of his pocket. The 2 tower over the room, their shadows twisting behind them. The CEO says to Todd, cool and deliberate, the fruit nears ripeness. Our guest of honor has arrived. Todd scans the crowd, his lips curling. Todd says, where is he? The CEO removes his glasses slowly, revealing his robotic eyes, faintly lit, scanning the crowd with eerie precision. Data seems to scroll across his irises as he surveys the guests. The CEO says quietly with a faint smile, I don't know exactly which one yet. He tilts his head slightly, his eyes narrowing as they gleam, but my scans say, he's here. Todd says, gruff and skeptical, scanners in your glasses and your eyes? Little much, don't you think? The CEO doesn't even glance at him, a faint smirk curling on his lips as his eyes continue to sweep the room. The CEO says coldly, without hesitation, overkill is simply a luxury most of you can't afford. At the high balcony overlook of the ballroom, the raccoon and the squirrel peek over the railing, holding rotten croissants from the buffet. The squirrel says, odd and whispering, there he is, the CEO, finally. Been waiting forever to see him get what's coming. The raccoon sniffs the food on the platter, then makes a disgusted face. The raccoon says, ugh, figures. Even the snacks here are rotten. You call this a gala? I've had fresher trash behind a Taco Bell. The squirrel, still hopeful, leaning forward over the edge, says, Don't care. Tonight's the night. Z-Man's gonna drop him easy. Raccoon, rolling his eyes, still sniffing the rotten croissant, says, Yeah, sure. And I'm the king of Columbia. Pass the popcorn. Over by Zach and LockDown, a dark voice creeps in. Sounds just like Z-Man's voice, but darker. It says, Let me take the stage. You sing to hearts, I scream to souls. Zach is grabbing the edge of the table again, and LockDown notices. LockDown whispers, smirking faintly, Relax, bro. Nobody sniffed us out yet. You're just another suit at the table for now. The CEO raises a goblet. All chatter halts. A harvest banner behind him shows a meat hook strangled by a rotting vine. Shadows along the walls move unnaturally. His relic pulses faintly. The CEO says, Esteemed guests, architects of appetite, I welcome you to a gala that is not just a gala. This is the beginning of our rule, of a new world, full of harvest. And tonight, I share with you the blueprint for this better age. A world without hunger, without chaos, without limits. He raises a sleek, black Harvest branded tablet. A holographic projection flares to life behind him. A global network of factories pulsing with dark energy. Order, built on efficiency. Prosperity, harvested and perfected. Brent says over comms, whispering, Z-Man, you see that thing on his tablet? That's the drive I mentioned. It's logging shadow frequencies across the globe. You get your hands on it, we can map the entire corruption grid. I give you the cue when it's time to make a move. Just stay in place, no pressure. Zach's vision distorts. The black flower on the table pulses faintly. Guest's laughter slows, warping. In the reflection of a wine glass, Zach sees his son's face for a second. It flickers out. Z-Man's own voice, distorted, booms in his head. Peace won't save him. Not this time. Sound fades to a high-pitched whine. Zach clutches the table, sweating. The relic flower pulses again. Z-Man hears whispers again, louder now. They never learn. But you can teach. Over the shoulder view from Zach and LockDown, rows of executives drink blood. The relic at the CEO's chest pulses deeper. The CEO says, They branded us monsters for wanting more. But cruelty is survival, sharpened into truth. A velvet curtain twitches. A skinned animal corpse is dragged behind it. Guests smile, dabbing their mouths. The CEO continues, Nature doesn't beg. It doesn't ask. It devours. The CEO lifts a fork, pointing to the bloodied steaks, and he says, To indulgence without guilt. Appetite without apology. The crowd responds, To indulgence. Glass is raised. A guest winks at Zach. He flinches. The velvet curtain behind the CEO begins to rise. Guests fall silent. Zach's face twitches. He's calm on the outside, but his pupils dilate, and the show continues. Brent says over comm, in a sharp whisper, Z-Man, now, hum it, quietly. Trigger the frequency, just enough to tickle the field. LockDown, on my mark, grab the drive. It's chained to his wrist. Shadowbound. If the hum can weaken the link, then you can grab it. Zach nods faintly. His pulse quickens. He lowers his head, pretending to adjust his cuff. Then Z-Man begins to sing, barely audible. A whisper of green light, almost imperceivable, crawls from Zach's throat into the air. At PAS HQ, Brent, Kyle, and the others in the comms room see it flicker across their monitors. The chain twitches. One link glows for a heartbeat. Then the glow dies and the chain turns all black again. Brent says over comms, It's not holding. Shadow field's too dense. LockDown says it, whispering through a clenched teeth. Yeah, no kidding. That thing just snarled at me for glancing at it. A moment earlier, LockDown glances at the drive on CEO's tablet. A jagged slit forms like a mouth, shadow teeth gnashing soundlessly. and it growls at him. LockDown quickly looks away, forcing a casual smirk, lifting his glass like he's just enjoying the show. Play it cool, pretend the USB drive didn't just grow a mouth. Brent says over the comms, abort the pull, eyes forward, we regroup on my mark, don't draw attention. Zach straightens slowly, forcing his face to stay calm while the crowd applauds. His hand trembles under the table. The faint green glow in his throat flickers then fades out completely. The light dies before it can reach the surface. The ballroom feels colder now. Candle flames bend toward the CEO as if drawn to him. The laughter around the room distorts too loud, too hollow. The shadows are waking up. Zach's jaw clenches, eyes twitch. He hears another whisper again, like metal scraping bone. The voice says, "Let me in. Mercy's music is dead. Also, if this guy says one more word, I'm gonna hack his bank account, buy 1 trillion rotten bananas with his blood money, and fill his mansion with it, then tie him up in the rotting center to let rot with his money, literally." Spotlights shift to a golden curtain. The CEO gestures toward it. His relic flares again. The CEO says, "Now, the main course. Power doesn't cry, it consumes." As the CEO continues his speech, Zach jerks upright suddenly, then immediately slouches, as if something is tugging at him like a puppet. Z-Man says loud and sporadically, "Quick question, how many mirrors did you break before you stopped seeing a monster?" LockDown, seated right beside Zach, bursts out laughing at the insult. Loud, genuine. "Yo, okay, that was savage." Then his smile fades as he looks at Zach more closely. Something's off. Zach's face twitches again. LockDown says lower, leaning in, "Chill, Z-Man, you good? This ain't part of the plan, bro." The CEO's speech halts. Everyone turns. Zach's face twitches. His expression flickers wildly. The CEO says, "Who is this lunatic?" Zach leans forward, still twitching. Then the voice emerges again, with a game show host energy, and he says, "Follow-up question. When your grandkids ask you what you built, will it be A, cages, B, cancer, or C, the sweet awkward silence between phone calls?" The CEO raises his voice into the microphone. "Silence!" Then Crazy Man continues, "Oh, nope, wrong. Wasn't silence. You don't have grandkids. You sold them to further your blood-sucking murderous empire, like a soulless villain." The room is dumbfounded. Even CEO can't turn away. He's shocked to hear anyone talk to him like this. And then Z-Man continues, "But don't you worry. You still win a complimentary prize. Would you like to win A, a shadow tendril up your ass, B, your entire empire falling down, C, all of your savings drained, or D, all of the above? Tell us what you're taking home, champ." The room is completely frozen. A moment of disbelief as someone dares to publicly humiliate the CEO. Zach mutters under his breath to LockDown, voice twitchy and giddy as he sits down, "I swear, if this guy monologues one more time, I'm gonna set his stock portfolio on fire with a kazoo solo." LockDown says alarmed, "Yo, Z-Man, what the hell are you even saying right now, man? Dial it back, we're live, dude. This ain't the vibe." The CEO narrows his eyes, squinting at the flickering figure across the room. Shadows cling to Zach's body like smoke. The relic on the CEO's chest pulsed once, dim and unsure. The energy familiar but twisted, fragmented. Could it be? He shakes his head slightly, straightens his tie, then scoffs, masking his uncertainty with arrogance. The CEO says, "No, just another sabotager, playing Messiah." The CEO, fuming, waving to security, says, "Someone shut him up so I can finish my speech, and bring out the main dish." 2 Harvest agents then approach Z-Man. The first Harvest agent steps forward, and Z-Man's eyes lock. He flicks his wrist, and Z-Man says, "Let's see what you've been swallowing, big guy." The agent's jaws stretch unnaturally wide, bones popping grotesquely. He convulses, retching until an entire translucent baby cow corpse emerges. Slick with black sludge, it twitches, then rises its eyes glowing green. A haunting moan escapes its warped mouth. Then Z-Man says, "Whoa, that definitely wasn't vegan." The undead calf jerks upright like a zombie, its hooves scraping the floor. With a wet, gurgling moan, it lurches toward the second agent. Behind it, the first agent crumbles lifelessly to the ground like a discarded husk. Z-Man grins at the second agent and says, "Boo!" The agent runs away with the zombie calf in hot pursuit. Just as the zombie cow moans and hooves hit the marble floor, Z-Man flicks 2 fingers. A ripple of shadow sweeps under the nearest table, dragging the collapsed agent's body out of sight. The cow disappears behind a velvet curtain. Z-Man says to himself casually, "Shh, not yet. That part is invitation only." Guests nearby turn to look, but see nothing. Just Zach leaning forward on his chair calmly, hands folded. A guest thinks to himself, blinking, "Thought I heard something." Then, T-Bone Todd raises a curtain. Servers flanking him behind a steel platform with cages of live baby animals, calves, piglets, chicks, all trembling. Todd's relic surges violently. The CEO says, grinning, "Still breathing, still innocent, still tender." CEO's voice slowly fading, "Still tender." Then Z-Man stares at Todd. One of Z-Man's eyes glow green, one glows black. And Todd freezes mid-step, as if put into a trance. In Todd's head, he sees a massive wasteland. Every meat shop is boarded up. Grill fires are out, plates filled with kale and tofu. Z-Man's in the vision, in all black, with a green Z on his chest, apron on, force-feeding Todd broccoli. And he says, "Time to chew on the truth, big guy. Don't worry, it's cruelty-free." Todd is screaming, "No, no, no meat! It's out! It's not gone!" Todd screams, trembling. The cage slips from his hand. Piglets squeal in terror. The air warps. Zach's body blurs into living shadow for an instant, reappearing crouched at the floor. The cage rests on the ground, door flung open. Piglets scatter free, squeaking, unharmed. Then Zach flies back to his seat in shadow form. It all happened in the literal blink of an eye. So fast, no one noticed. Over at PAS HQ, Zach's cam stutters, frames smear, audio warps. Lynn says, leaning in, "Video stuttering, did he just move?" Brent says, frowning, "Shadow signatures, could be interfering." The monitors stabilize, Zach is back in his seat. Brent says, quiet, uneasily, "That signature's not matching Zach." But it is. It's like him, but something else. Zach stares at his own hands, wide-eyed, chest heaving. Zach thinks to himself, "What did I just do?" Dark tendrils coil faintly around the tips of his fingers. Then the same dark voice comes into his head again. "Smooth, right? That was just a taste. Imagine if you stopped fighting me and let me run full speed." Face twisted, Todd shoves at the piglets with both hands, corralling them back into the cage. His massive frame hunches over them like a starving animal. Todd says, snarling, "No, no running! You're meat! You stay meat!" Sweat drips down Zach's brow. He trembles, torn between relief at saving them and horror at what he just did. And Todd, he feels relieved to be back, but confused as to what just happened. The room fills with gasps and applause. A guest taps the glass cage with a skewer, licking their lips. The CEO says, toasting, "Tonight, we feast not on death, but on the raw truth of power and purity." Zach's eyes are wild on his face. He's trembling, his fists clenched harder than before. Blood seeps from his palm, and then the voice comes back. "They won't stop unless we become their nightmare. We'll carve their skull into a crown of terror and wear it at every battle." Wait, that's not vegan. We'll mold a replica from fermented coconut husks, and yeah, it'll be real spooky, ethically sourced. Then we'll crush their skull as self-defense, of course. The CEO raises his goblet, now filled with vicious fluid. The CEO says, "To extinction of weakness, and of all who dare whisper mercy and morrow." Zach's nose begins to bleed. His skin turns pallid. Behind him, a shadow forms, and the whisper booms back into his head. "No more songs for peace. We fight for justice." The table cracks by Zach. Eyes flare, one green, one pitch black. His veins blacken like they're burned. The black flower relic on the table flashes violently, feeding the cage. And then the pot that the flower is in bursts open and soil gets all over the table. Zach grips the table so hard it cracks and a chunk falls off of it. Meat juice pulls and starts dripping onto the ground. A black-green pulse radiates from Zach outward. A half-eaten steak on a gold plate twitches violently. Veins stretch across it like spiderwebs. A tongue lashes from its center. A whisper escapes, a broken, gurgling moo. Even in death, they remembered. All the meat on plates starts to twist, mutating into undead cow-like abominations. Rib cages fold open, eyes return. Full forms form from meat shadow blobs and sludge growing. Meat chunks fuse together, folding over themselves, stretching, sprouting limbs. Roast chicken wings flap open as jagged claws emerge from bone. Bacon-wrapped cuts unravel into tendons that wrap back into the shape of a snorting, rotting pig. The assembled monsters shudder and grow, forming nearly full-sized zombie cows, pigs, and chickens, twisted reflections of what they were. Their bodies hiss with shadow steam, and their eyes glow green. Flesh pulses like it's being breathed back into place, wrong, but alive. The guests scream in horror as the creatures rise, blocking escape routes and filling the ballroom with death. A terrified Harvest agent sprints across the ballroom floor, 3 snarling zombie cows and a pack of half-rotten chickens in pursuit. Their hooves slam into overturned tables, their eyes glowing sickly green. The agent stumbles past the cages holding the live animals destined for slaughter. One zombie pig crashes into the bars behind him, teeth gnashing. The cage door buckles and snaps open. Wide-eyed rabbits, goats, and hens bolt out in a frenzy, scattering into the panicked crowd. Amid the chaos, one freed calf pauses just long enough to look back at the rotting cow monster that broke the cage. Zach thinks to himself, "The dead gave them freedom." The balcony shakes violently. The squirrel and the raccoon clutch the railing as zombie cows slam into cages below. The squirrel says, terrified but thrilled, "They're breaking loose!" The raccoon says, screaming, "I knew we should have stayed on the roof." The railing gives away. Both tumble down, landing awkwardly on the backs of fleeing zombie animals. The raccoon says, flailing, "This isn't on the menu!" The squirrel says, arms raised, ecstatic, "Woo! Ride of our lives!" Animals stampede out through shattered side doors. The squirrel and the raccoon clinging desperately as they vanish into another room. A mother cow is inside this room, and she says, "My baby." The raccoon and squirrel see the baby hiding under a table in the other room where all the chaos is unfolding. The raccoon says, "Oh man, it went bad, just like last time, but who's gonna help us?" The squirrel says, "Z-Man, but where is he?" Back in the dining hall, one guest says, shrinking back, horrified, "What is this thing?" LockDown says, whispering, "Okay, zombie cows? That's new." Back at PAS HQ, one screen shows LockDown's body cam. The other screen labeled Zach, feed lost. Lynn says, "LockDown's mic and camera stable, switching to his angle." Brent says into comms, "Lock, you're our eyes now. Keep talking." Zach says darkly and amused, "Funny thing about shadow goons. They don't mind slaughter, but they sure panic when the meat tries to do the slaughtering." Z-Man steps forward through the smoke and screaming, his chest heaving. The fake shadow aura, the harvest spray, crackles and peels away like scorched oilskin, revealing his true green suit underneath, glowing faintly for just a breath. The real Z-Man stands there, emerald and furious. Then, no more hiding. A shockwave of darkness engulfs him. Tendrils of shadow devour the green, flipping it inside out. What was once black trimmed green becomes green trimmed black. All black, with a green Z on his chest. His armor warps and grows, cracked with pulsing veins of sickly neon. Z-Man is gone. Standing there now is someone else. A high-pitched sound comes through Z-Man's mic at PAS HQ. So painful, the team had to put Z-Man's mic on mute. Brent yells, "We just lost Zach's feed!" Lynn says fast, typing, "Confirm video, audio offline, only biometric energy, telemetry still pinging and it's spiking." Brent says grimly, "Then we ride blind. Track the signature." Zach stands, eyes blazing, chest rising, an unstable breath, and a horrifying grin stretched across his face. Zach slams onto the table, arms wide, black-green armor shines, eyes glow with madness. Then Zach says, Dinner's canceled, you rot-sucking parasites! Now, let's see how you like being on the menu. A Harvest agent trips and starts backing away from Zach. He says, shaking and pointing at him, You're crazy, man! Then Zach says, lifting him with his shadow telekinetic powers while smirking, Wrong! I'm Crazy Man! The agent screams as Crazy Man hurls him through 3 walls like a swirling blast of shadow energy. Zombie cows stampede through the ballroom. Chaos erupts, tables smash, chandeliers crash, screams fill the air. Crazy Man grabs a guest and hurls them through a side wall, smashing into the catering kitchen behind the ballroom. Steam hisses, knives clatter. He slams the guest into an industrial meat freezer with a deafening clang. Another guest stumbles back, only to be yanked into the kitchen by shadowy chains that coil from Crazy Man's hands, strapping them to a conveyor belt lined with bloody trays. Crazy Man says, You wanted cruelty! Here's your signature dish! Crazy Man struts through the carnage, head high, shadow flaring around him. Zombie cows stampede in a frenzy, chasing screaming agents and Harvest cultists. 2 monstrous cows have lashed onto the same unfortunate agent, their slobbering jaws clamped on his arms. They yank back and forth like a grotesque game of tug-of-war. The agent says, screaming, Not my shoulders! Not my shoulders! Other cult members scramble onto tables, swatting desperately as cows buck and snort, overturning trays and scattering silverware like shrapnel. Over at PAS HQ, the mission feed glitches violently. Audio distorts from LockDown's mic with Z-Man's rising Crazy Man scream. Monitors flicker between golden light and shadow static. Agents in the room freeze at their stations. Nicky is sitting off to the side with a headset. His eyes widen as the screams cut through his earpiece. Half human, half monster. Nicky thinks to himself, Is that Zach? Brent says, snapping to Kyle, I knew it! You heard that! I was right! That's not human, Kyle. It's shadow. He's slipping and you know it. Lynn says, firm, It's fine, Nicky. You can stay. It's probably just a feed surge. Brent says, snapping, No! He doesn't have the clearance for a Code Red meltdown. This is obviously a Code Red meltdown for a mission. And protocol says he shouldn't be in this room. We don't even know if he can handle the pressure. All recruits must leave the room. A PAS officer moves to usher Nicky out. Nicky stumbles to his feet, looking back once, eyes wide. The distorted comms still echo faintly behind him. In the hallway just outside, the door hisses shut. Nicky stands stiff, shoulders tight. Tyler steps out after him, hands in his pockets, his tone softer than usual. Tyler says calm and steady, Don't let Brent rattle you. He's wound tonight. Shadows make him worse. Nicky looks down, fists clenched. His reflection in the glass wall beside them flickers faintly with static from the war room. Nicky says quiet and shaky, But that scream, that wasn't him. Not Zach. Tyler leans against the wall beside him, voice low but firm. And Tyler says, Doesn't matter how it sounded. What matters is who he is when he comes back. And every time, he's still Zach. Nicky's jaw trembles, but he nods faintly, eyes fixed on the door. Then Nicky says to himself as a whisper, Then I'll believe in him too. All of the agents from before are all on the ground, and the mother cow says, Please, please save my baby. A side chamber off the ballroom. The raccoon and squirrel crouch among the freed animals, rabbits, goats, and a calf. The raccoon and squirrel are trying to calm them as chaos echoes from the hall. The squirrel says, whispering, hopeful, We gotta get that baby and get them out, but how? The raccoon says, grumbling, Yeah, sure. Excuse me, Harvest Psychos, could you let our friends out the front door? I mean, yeah, sounds real easy. From the hall, LockDown storms past, blasting Harvest agents with a shockwave and bass drop. The animals spook, pressing back. Squirrel's eyes widen as he spots Z-Man in the distance, back turned, aura twitching. The squirrel says, pointing, hopeful, Look, it's Z-Man! He'll help us! The raccoon hesitates, then scampers forward, paws waving. The raccoon says, shouting desperately, Yo, green guy! A little help! Getting these animals out of here! Hello! Crazy Man turns, face stretched in a too-wide grin, eyes blazing with manic energy. Then Crazy Man says, cheerful and unsettling, Okay. Shadow tendrils lash out from his back like living whips. They slash through approaching Harvest agents and sending them crashing. Then the tendrils curl gently around the raccoon and squirrel, flinging them onto the backs of the panicked animals. The animals stampede out through shattered side doors into the night. The raccoon clings to a goat, screaming while Squirrel spreads his arms like he's on a roller coaster. The raccoon says, panicked, "This is not what I meant!" The squirrel says, grinning and thrilled, "He did! He helped us!" The mother cow is with her baby now, and they run off in fear, but once again reunited. As the herd disappears into the moonlight, the eerie shadow tendrils withdraw, snaking back into Crazy Man's body, like black smoke sucked into a lung. The shadows return to their master. Inside Zach's earpiece, PAS HQ erupts in panic. Brent says, "Z-Man, what the hell is happening? This isn't protocol!" LockDown flips over a flaming buffet table, eyes fixed on Crazy Man's rampage. LockDown says, "Okay, this is bananas." And Kyle says through the headset, "That can't be Z-Man. Tell me that's not Z-Man." LockDown smirks and uses his microphone to do a bass drop as he sends 10 pieces of plate and silverware hurling into 10 charging guards' faces with accurate aim. Then LockDown says, "Relax, he's just venting. I'll mop up the mess." In a deep layer below, in the Shadow Realm, the Rotfather watches through a shadow portal, his throne of vines pulsing. Around him, Gala agents thrown by Crazy Man soar through the air, just as shadow portals open to intercept them. They're yanked mid-air into the Shadow Realm. Vines lash from the rotten core's pit, dragging screaming agents into its rotting mouth. The Rotfather says,
"Useless parasites. Can't even handle one fractured soul."
The Rotfather turns to a chained cowboy titanium. Then the Rotfather says,
"Did you see him? Crazy Man has risen. Z-Man is broken."
Then Cowboy Titanium grins through blood. Cowboy says, "Broken? Nah, he's wild. You can't leash a wild card." The Rotfather narrows his eyes, looking back through the portal. Crazy Man is laughing, flinging another exec into shadows. Shadow chains snap wildly around him. Rotfather, realizing, says,
"Wait, no, he's not under the core."
Vines rip at the walls as the Rotfather screams,
"He's not mine!"
Cowboy coughs blood and chuckles. That boy and that rapper, LockDown, they're gonna turn their monster into mulch. The Rotfather turns and leaves, and as he walks out, he says,
"Hope is the first flavor to rot."
Cowboy leans his head against the wall and whispers to himself, "Z-Man, don't forget who you are. Don't forget your why. Who you're doing this for." The Gala throbs with decay. Shadow storms swirl around cracked pillars. Broken monitors loop harvest propaganda. The floor pulses as Crazy Man stands center stage, twitching with glee. Blood and shadow drip off him like melted war paint. A dozen harvest agents charge him, mutated by relics, twitching with data feeds and shadow enhancements. Hooks, stun rods, glowing armor. Crazy Man says in a low theatrical growl, "I gave you a chance, then 2 more. I even threw in a coupon. Buy one, get one free tofu blocks, and you never used them." With a manic giggle, he explodes forward, claws out, tearing through the nearest agents. Each step is a blur of motion, smashing some through walls, turning others into puddles of shadow sludge, impaling more with writhing black tendrils as he moves like a storm through the room. He begins to sing, each verse timed perfectly to his strikes, the words laced with venom and shadow, his power blasting outward in ways that disintegrate weapons and agents alike. Crazy Man says, singing, dark and rhythmic.
It's flooding out in waves, carbon emissions straight into your face, and I'm wondering how long it's gonna take till Mother Nature breaks. Got these scars written down.
With every note, a wave of shadow energy rips outward, obliterating squads of harvest agents and their weapons in jagged blasts of black light. Crazy Man continues, prowling forward.
Got these scars written down the street, the plastic wind seas, confusing all the dirty electricity. Spit out the meat, do you know just what it means? Like hello, there's
It's a carnage ballad. blades of rotting energy slice through armor like melted wax. Vines snatch weapons out of the air and snap them in half. Shadow tendrils coil and crack agents into pieces, leaving nothing but ash and whispers. As the last of the standard agents collapse in heaps of sludge and shattered armor, the air seems to still for a beat. Then, from the shadows at the edge of the hall, several elite Harvest agents step forward. Their ceremonial black and gold armor glints faintly under the chandeliers, etched with crimson glyphs that shimmer like embers. They raise their scatter blades and living cleavers in perfect unison, blocking Crazy Man's path. Then Crazy Man says, leaning forward, eyes wild,
"You polished that armor so pretty. Too bad you'll never get to wear it again."
He lunges without hesitation, a blur of vines and shadow fire tearing through them like paper. Their armor buckles and splits, weapons snapped mid-swing. In moments, they're left in a crumbled heap at his feet as he straightens. Amid the chaos, before Crazy Man's rampage resumes, the ballroom erupts in pandemonium. Chandeliers shatter, elites fleeing, smoke curling through the broken glass. The CEO kneels beside the fallen podium, retrieving a cracked tablet. He detaches a glowing flash drive module and slides it into a sleek black drone from his jacket. The CEO says, quiet and focused, "Objective complete." He glances toward the melee, voice low, measured growl. "Rotfather was right. Rot doesn't need chains. It multiplies on contact." The drone launches, streaking upward through a fractured skylight, disappearing into the night. The CEO presses 2 fingers to his earpiece, voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. The CEO commands, "All remaining Harvest units, advance! No retreating! No hesitation. If you falter, the core will feed on your failure." Dozens of Harvest agents surge in, armor pulsing crimson. They fire shadow rounds, launch nets, and charge Crazy Man. Crazy Man tendrils lash outward, ripping through walls and smoke. Agents are flung like rag dolls, hurled through pillars, some dragged screaming into zombie hordes. Others vanished into the shadows, armor crunching before silence swallows them. The CEO watches, jaw tightening, not out of pity, but cold calculation. The crimson reflections fade from his glasses as the battlefield empties in seconds. The CEO mutters sharply, "Enough! Foot soldiers won't hold the line." He scans through the haze. Then the CEO says low, irritated, "Where is my blunt instrument?" Through drifting smoke, his eyes lock on a different room, the banquet hall. T-Bone Todd, oblivious, festering at a table piled high with meat. Grease and blood smeared Todd's face. Zombie calves and hens nip at his boots. He swats lazily, still eating. Todd says, chewing, unaware, "Mine! All mine! Promotions come to the hungry." A zombie piglet clamps onto his calf. Todd yelps, kicks it off, then immediately grabs another steak. The CEO steps into view, half silhouetted, eyes glowing faint red behind his cracked glasses. The CEO says, flat and venomous, "So, this is my tank. Drowning in gravy." He taps the dial on his wrist. His black suit hardens, shadow titanium mode engaged. Dark plates sliding over his arms and chest. Without raising his voice, he strides forward. A pulse of shadow energy blasts the zombie animals aside like scattered ash. Then the CEO says coldly, "Enough indulgence." He grabs Todd by the collar, lifting him effortlessly despite his bulk, dragging him from the table. Todd flails, clutching a dripping steak, and Todd says muffled and panicked, "Wait, I'm not done." The CEO says, "You never are." The CEO steps into the corridor, calm amid alarms and screams, then tosses Todd down with mechanical precision. Todd sprawls, wheezing, just short of Crazy Man's line of sight down the main hall. The CEO reaches into his pocket and withdraws a black coin relic etched with writhing glyphs. It hums like a heartbeat. The CEO says low and reverent, "Let's begin the real transaction." He straightens, shadow titanium suit glinting, relic glowing in his palm, eyes locked toward the distant chaos where Crazy Man rages. Smoke and sparks swirl around him. Agents' bodies litter the ballroom, the cost of failure paid, orders given, mercy revoked. At the far end of the throne chamber, the CEO stands in shadow-reinforced armor. T-Bone Todd slouches beside him, clutching a hunk of meat. They watch as a dozen elite agents surge past, weapons raised, their boots thundering toward Crazy Man Storm and Vines in flame. From the edge of the ruin, the architects watch their soldiers march into the mob. Crazy Man says, grinning mid-slice, "You guys charge like it's Black Friday!" Cute. Across the chamber, LockDown runs in. LockDown says, shouting, "Zach, don't go full gremlin yet, wait for backup!" Too late. Crazy Man backflips off the helmet of a twitching agent, flipping through the air with feral grace. Shadow tendrils whip outward mid-spin, impaling a dozen fleeing Harvest agents as they scatter in terror. The air crackles with black energy as his grin widens. Crazy Man lands lightly on the marble floor, crouched low in the center of the carnage as the agents fall and make a dozen thump sounds. A slow exhale, then his burning gaze drifts down the hall, locking on the CEO and T-Bone Todd watching from a distance. Crazy Man begins to sing, his voice dripping with mockery and menace. With every word he snarls, the shadow tendrils pulse and lash outwards, synchronizing to his rhythm. Each symbol sends black lines whispering toward the CEO and T-Bone Todd, wrapping around them like a living melody of darkness. Crazy Man starts singing, low, unhinged, each word punctuated by an attack.
Doing up in the middle of the night. Hello, sunshine. What you doing up in the middle of the night?
The tendrils constrict, dragging the two closer as the air thickens with his power. The CEO winces as he strains against the crushing vines. Todd thrashes, his greasy fingers clawing at the cords of shadow choking his arms and chest. The CEO snarls, his free hand twisting the dial on his wrist tech. A faint click and the device glows dark red. A readout flashes Shadow Titanium mode, level 10. His armor plates harden even more. Shadow spikes jutting out as he starts to push against the tendrils, the vines around him splintering under the enhanced force. Crazy Man's eyes gleam with wild delight as he feels the resistance. He throws his head back and laughs unhinged hysterically. Oh yeah, come on, big man, let's dance! With the sudden surge of strength, the tendrils tighten even harder, crushing into the CEO's armor. The shadow titanium plating groans, then shudders away from the CEO's body. The plates clatter to the floor in a heap, stripped from the shadow webbing that held them. The CEO stumbles, his tech sparking and sputtering. And then, with a flash of resolve, the CEO's eyes narrow. His still free hand claws into his coat and produces a pitch black coin relic. His fingers clutch it tight before hurling it high into the air. As it spins, glyphs ripple outward in a web of dark energy. The glyphs pulse mid-air and slam around Crazy Man like a net. He jerks and freezes, hovering in the air, body contorted, caught like a glitch in reality. T-Bone Todd grabs his relic from the corner of the room and raises it. The metal flares, groaning under the build of shadow energy. The air ripples like boiling asphalt. T-Bone Todd raises his searing branding iron. The metal flares, groaning under the buildup of shadow energy. The air ripples like boiling asphalt. Todd snarls and drives the branding iron straight into Crazy Man's chest. Crazy Man doesn't scream, he stares at them, laughing, calm. You're gonna need a scarier stick than that. The CEO and Todd exchange a glance. Rattled, their most powerful relic isn't breaking him, something is off. Meanwhile, over where LockDown is at, a wall explodes, bone shards fly. Carl the Carnivore stomps out, armored in fossilized plates, eyes glowing murder red. Carl the Carnivore says, grinning wide, "Miss me, meat stick?" LockDown freezes, then LockDown says, "Carl." Carl the Carnivore says, "You're about to get pancaked in stereo." Carl charges. LockDown barely dodges. Carl backhands him through a pile of speakers. Back at Crazy Man's battle, Crazy Man tingos with Todd and CEO. Relics bind him mid-air and cook him deeper into the shadows. The CEO says, "You're cracked, and you've lost." T-Bone Todd says, "All rage, no hope." Crazy Man waves his hand with theatrical flair. A shadow pulse surges backward from his body, slamming into the branding iron like a shockwave. The branding iron trembles, cracks and then disintegrates into black dust into Todd's grip. Crazy Man floats upright, laughing. Then Crazy Man says, "Hope!" I fed that to a ghost hamster 2 hallucinations ago. Chains unravel from the glyphs, trying to bind him again. Crazy Man twists violently, screaming. The chains shatter. He spins, launching a vine-laced punch that slams Todd into a wall with a thundering crunch. Crazy Man lunges toward the CEO and rips the relic coin from the air. Crazy Man says in a mock whisper, "Oops, dropped your soul savings account." He tears the coin in half like paper. Sparks and glyphs explode in the air. The CEO twitches, shadows flickering in his body. Crazy Man grabs both the CEO and Todd by the throat and lifts them off the ground, manic and wild-eyed. Then Crazy Man says, "Contestants, congrats! You won!" A slow-motion toss into a meat blender. Crazy Man yanks the CEO and Todd off their feet, one in each hand. As chaos rages behind him, the shadow chains around them whip like tendrils. He charges through the ruined kitchen toward a massive industrial meat blender, its blades spinning like a mechanical nightmare. Crazy Man says, shouting over the noise, "You call yourselves apex predators? Let's see how you taste." He hurls both of them at the blender. They smash into the side, loud, bone-crunching thuds. The opening is far too narrow. The CEO bounces off, coughing. Todd hits like a wrecking ball, his shoulder crumpling the metal casing with a deep dent as he groans in pain. Crazy Man says, mock and disappointed, "Ah, too chunky to puree." Crazy Man runs up, grabs Todd by both legs, and tries to shove him headfirst into the blender opening. The metal groans. Todd screams. One leg kicks free. Then Crazy Man says, grunting, "Come on! You're like 40% fat! You should slide right in!" He sings and sees if it will push Todd through. Crazy Man sings,
What you doing now? What you doing now? What you doing now? In the middle of the night. You doing up? You doing up? You doing up?
After several wild stomps and failed attempts to jam Todd and the CEO in, Crazy Man straightens, breathing hard. He flicks blood off his fingers, like a bored chef. Crazy Man says casual, "Fine. No shortcuts." He lifts both men again, shadow energy spiraling around their faces. Their eyes flutter, rolling back as he pulls them into a trance. Veins glow green, smoke seeps into their nostrils. And Crazy Man says darkly, "Let's try something that sticks. Time to meet the world without meat." The ballroom shakes as LockDown slams Carl with the buffet table. Carl stumbles but grins, unfazed. Carl says mocking, "Cute. You lift furniture now. Guess Cowboy's rubbed off on you before we ripped him out of the picture." LockDown grits his teeth, charging again. He ducks a cleaver swing and lands a solid gut punch with his microphone in hand. He gives the gut punch a sonic blast. LockDown says, "Keep his name out of your crusty meat hole." Carl catches LockDown's next punch, bare-handed. He drives a knee into LockDown's side. There's a sickening crack. LockDown stumbles back, hand instinctively going to his side. His breathing's off. He doesn't fall yet. Carl steps forward, dragging the cleaver of dissonance. It hisses against the marble. Then Carl says, grinning, "Maybe when I'm done, I'll build me a new suit. Full cowboy edition." LockDown steadies himself, sweat beading. Then LockDown says, "Yeah, make sure it fits your ego. Cowboy had a spine. You're just fat with rot." Carl says low, snarling, "Oh, I'm gonna end you real slow. And when I do, I'll make your spine a trophy." Meanwhile, 2 rooms over, Crazy Man grabs Todd and the CEO by the neck. They choke, panicking. In Todd's vision, a barren world overrun with vegetables, no meat anywhere, barbecue pits replaced by community gardens. In CEO's vision, a cold alleyway. He's homeless. His designer suit is torn. His cracked phone shows his bank account, $0. His corporate ID badge is broken. People pass by, ignoring him. Crazy Man says, grinning, "Funny what grows in guilt, huh? Maybe you should have invested in a soul instead? The vision glitches. CEO and the Todd blink rapidly, gasping, snapping back to reality. Time seems to stop and freeze for a second. A skeletal figure, cloaked in shadows, steps from thin air. Mortem. Death has arrived. His eyes glow with stillness, not anger. Mortem says, "The Rotfather wants your death on his terms. Not like this. I'll return you, but make it count." Mortem waves a bony hand. Shadow flickers in their eyes. The trance breaks. They gasp. Crazy Man is still holding CEO and Todd by the neck. Green shadow energy is building up around Crazy Man as if he's about to explode. In Crazy Man's ear, the headset flickers. Brent's voice cuts in and out like a broken signal, distant, desperate, and cracking under emotion. Brent says, "Vitals crashing. Z-Man! Z-Man! Do you hear me? Lockdown's dying! We're losing him! You need to... Z-Man! Z-Man!" The static builds to a sharp whine, and then silence. Crazy Man hesitates, eyes flicker. Then he completely ignores it and tries to choke CEO and Todd even harder than before. Crazy Man says, gritting his teeth, "I didn't come this far to let murderers walk free." Just then, an explosion of shadow and green energy bursts out of Crazy Man, releasing Todd and CEO from his grip and bringing him to his knees. He's overloaded with energy. Crazy Man stiffens, his aura pulses erratically, while green and black streaks ripping through the air like broken lightning. The entire gala hums with unstable energy, rattling glass and chandeliers. At PAS HQ, Brent at the terminal says, "Chaotic frequency spike. The waveform's fracturing energy, feedback looping. He's boiling from the inside. If he keeps climbing, the field will implode." Back to Crazy Man. His hands tremble mid-air, veins of light crawling up his arms. His grin falters, breathing ragged. Brent says over comms, "Zach, you're not stabilizing it. Your system's rejecting. You're overloading. You have to anchor, lock onto something real before..." The world bends around Zach as if heat waves ripple through the room. Everything blurs except a flicker. Lockdown pinned, barely moving. Crazy Man's eyes glazed and flash a faint memory, light bleeding in. Zach has a memory of him in Lockdown. Lockdown rapping in downtown Columbia, Missouri, 9th Street and Broadway. After they're done performing together, Zach says to Lockdown, "You pulled me up when I was down, man. That means the world to me." Now, returning to present moment, Lockdown's eye twitches, still barely alive. Crazy Man roars. The villains, CEO and Todd, are on their knees, 20 feet away from Crazy Man. And Crazy Man is now standing up. He looks over at them and roars one last time, throwing the villains into a grotesque meat sculpture. The sculpture collapsed to the ground, creating a giant dust cloud. Meanwhile, over at Carl and Lockdown, Carl smashes Lockdown over and over again, fists raised. Lockdown says, "Weak. Zach, I can't." Crazy Man twitches, weakening, and then Z-Man starts to form over Zach's face, and Zach says, "I lost myself, but I'm not losing you." Z-Man's light appears, and Crazy Man's shadow starts to fade. And then Z-Man says, "You saved me once, now it's my turn." Z-Man makes his way to Lockdown and Carl as CEO and Todd burst upward out of the rubble from the meat sculpture. Carl raises his arm. Suddenly, Z-Man appears, glowing with sonic light. Z-Man says, singing, Z-Man unleashes a deafening sonic blast from his mouth, waves of raw sound ripping through the air. Carl lunges forward, raising the cleaver dissonance to block. The blast slams into it. The cleaver vibrates violently, then shatters into dust. Carl is launched backward by the force, crashing into the wall. Z-Man hears heavy stomps behind him. He spins around and sees T-Bone Todd and the CEO charging straight towards him, their eyes wild, fury in their faces. Without hesitation, Z-Man lets out another sonic blast, while grabbing onto Lockdown at the same time, which surges them forward out the window. The blast hits Todd and CEO hard, but just enough to make them stumble backward and to keep them from following them. Z-Man and Lockdown are now falling down the side of the 10-story building. Z-Man raises his free hand, not holding lockdown, to make vines grow up the side of the building to slow their fall. All the vines start to grow around Z-Man and LockDown, and they tug on them at the last moment, keeping them from hitting the ground. Z-Man thinks to himself, he almost died. We almost died. Because I let go. Moments later, a rooftop miles away, Z-Man sets LockDown down. They're battered. LockDown says, groaning, "You back, bro?" Z-Man says, "Yeah, I'm back." Then LockDown says, "Good." And his head falls back as if he just passed out again. Z-Man thinks to himself, "Yeah, for now," as LockDown falls back unconscious. Monitors flicker, static washing over Zack and LockDown's feed. Brent is already half-suited in PAS armor, helmet under his arm. Kyle and Lynn watch tensely from their stations. Brent says, grim, muttering, "I'm not sitting on my hands that he's losing control in there." Brent slams a hand on the console, voice sharp. Then Brent says, "I'm suiting up. I'm going in." Monitor feed stabilizes. Zack staggers into frame, battered but standing. LockDown passed out in the background. Zack forces a strained smile toward the camera. Then Zack says, "We're safe. Mission's over. Heading back now." Brent says into comms, "Negative. You're too weak to get caught again. Stay put. I'll come get you and bring you back to HQ." Z-Man says through comms, firm and despite exhaustion, "No, I've got him. Just keep the doors open. We'll make it back." Brent says low to Kyle, "We had a deal." Then Kyle says into comms, "Z, stay put. That's an order. Brent's in charge until you're clear." Zack's smile begins to fade, his eyes narrowing towards LockDown. Lynn interrupts, eyes wide at her console. Energy readouts spike violently, jagged graphs in red. Lynn says alarmed, "Wait, picking up a surge. Shadow signatures off the charts." Brent and Kyle lean over her shoulder. The screen shows two pulsing hotspots, one blazing near the elder tree, the other flickering faintly at the PAS HQ itself. Lynn says, continuing, "They're unstable, could be forming gates. One's concentrated at the elder tree, the other's weaker but right here at HQ." The glow from the monitors casts the two in sharp shadow. Two doors to the abyss. Choose wrong and both devour. A sleek scout stealth drone lifts off into the night, its engines glowing faint blue. Brent stands inside, flanked by 4 elite PAS agents in dark armor. Brent says to comms, steady, "Whatever those readings are, I'll check them out after I make sure LockDown gets home safe." As Brent walks out, he catches a glimpse of the readings and instantly thinks to himself what he thinks it is. Brent thinks, the rotten core. The stealth drone carrying Brent and his strike team had just launched. Its trail fades from the monitor. The HQ feels emptier without his shouting presence. Tyler stands with his arms crossed, watching the energy readouts still pulsing on the big screen. The elder tree hotspot glowing like a wound. The faint echo at PAS HQ flickering unstable. Tyler says low to himself, "2 doors, huh?" Both look bad. Nicky sits in the corner, hunched forward, elbows on his knees. His headset dangles loose from one hand. He looks exhausted, conflicted. Nicky says quiet and shaky, "What if Brent's right? What if Zach's not the same anymore? What's that mean about me?" Tyler turns, leans on the console beside Nicky. He doesn't answer right away, just studies the glowing map. The twin shadow pulses. His reflection looks older, warier than his face. Tyler finally says calmly, "Maybe he's not. But he's the one who got us this far, and that doesn't mean the rest of us are lost." Nicky's eyes linger on the elder tree reading, the pulsing hotspot reflected in his pupils. Nicky says, whispering, "So we still follow him, even if he's changing?" Tyler rests a hand on Nicky's shoulder. The two of them watch the readings in uneasy silence as the graphs spike higher, casting the room in a red glow. PAS agents arrive in a stealth drone. Brent rushes to help. Behind them, the night sky swirls with unnatural clouds forming a jagged spiral. Brent says, "The whole mission's blown. The core's waking up earlier than we thought. You fractured something." Zack says, "No, he fractured me. But we're not done." Zack's face is scorched, wary, half of it still cracked with shadow. His eyes glow faintly green. Zack thinks to himself, "I won't lose anyone else. Not to them. Not to him. Not to myself." Far below the earth again, the rotten core pulses faster, its surface blistering and leaking black sap. The Rotfather watches with a smile. The Rotfather says,
"The gate is almost open. Let them run. Let them believe in their love. It will all all rot.
Z-Man stands at the edge of a ruined rooftop as dawn threatens the horizon. LockDown is carried off by agents. In the far distance, the Tree of Life sways unnaturally as shadows begin seeping into its roots. Brent says, Z-Man, let's go now. That's an order. The rotten core awakens, and only a broken hero remains to stop it. Far away, the Tree of Life splits further under the moonlight. The war isn't over. The mirror has just begun to crack. In the Shadow Realm, at the Rotfather's chamber, Carl, T-Bone Todd, and the CEO crawl toward the Rotfather's throne, shamed, bruised. T-Bone Todd says,
"We did it. We made him turn. He's unhinged."
Carl says, grinning,
"He's your puppet now, right?"
The Rotfather's eyes blaze. Rotfather says, snarling,
"You fools! That is no puppet!"
He slams his clawed fist down. The entire chamber shakes.
"I cannot control him! He dances to no beat but his own! Screams laughing into the void!"
CEO says, nervously, "But he's corrupted. Isn't that what you wanted?" The Rotfather says, low, seething,
"I wanted despair, obedience, but this thing, this crazy man, he is chaos in a clown's coat."
The room goes silent. The Rotfather says to himself,
"And chaos cannot be controlled, only endured."
At PAS HQ, the Medbay, nighttime, dim lights. LockDown lays horizontally in a floating cryotube, vitals steady. Lynn is asleep at her terminal, a blanket over her shoulders. Zach stands alone, swaying suit scuffed, eyes ringed. They shake faintly as he unlocks a cracked phone. His thumb hovers over a saved voicemail. Zach plays the voicemail. His son's mom voice comes over, saying, "Okay, say hi to Daddy. Go ahead." Then Zach hears his son's voice saying, muffled and giggly, "Hi, Dada. Miss you. Love you." A breath shudders out, eyes wet, but he smiles, small, undoing. Zach whispers to himself, "I'm trying, little man. I'm trying." The room leans. Zach's pupils flick. His knees buckle. The phone slips from Zach's hand in slow motion, the voicemail still playing. The phone hits the ground and then says, "I love you." Zach hits the floor on his side, out cold. A faint black-green hiss bleeds off him like steam after a storm. Telemetry from Zach's rig, energy signature, falling, stabilizing, yellow. Heart rate drops from red spike to normal range. Lynn raises her head, half awake. She glances back, sees Zach on the floor and bolts up. Lynn says, urgent whisper, "Zach?" She checks his pulse, relief. She pulls a thermal blanket over him. Then Lynn says quiet to herself, "He burned everything." She sees the cracked phone on the ground and pauses the voicemail to keep it from playing over and over again, then sets it on the counter next to Zach. LockDown sleeps in blue light. Zach sleeps on the floor under the blanket. Lynn sits between them, awake now, watching a monitor that shows 2 looming hotspots, Elder Tree blazing and HQ flickering. Dawn's first light hints at the windows. Next, the rotten core wakes, and a broken hero has to rise.
There were times when I exploded in my life, and I felt like it was the only way for me to survive. But the truth is, it just made the problems worse. In the story, everything is unraveling now. The mission's gone sideways, people are hurt, and something deep underground has started to move. The pressure is rising for everyone, and the truth is, sometimes you keep fighting even when it feels like the very thing you're facing might swallow you whole. Thank you for watching. See you in episode 7, the final episode of season 1.
What you doing now? What you doing now? What you doing up in the middle of the night? What you doing now? What you doing now? What you doing up in